"Get off my property. I have a reservation. Your kind doesn't reserve anything here, boy. Now walk." And who exactly made that rule? The man in the gray fishing cap didn't flinch. He just stood there, hands loose at his sides, the way a man stands when he already knows how the story ends. Because the woman shouting at him about who belonged had absolutely no idea. 3 weeks earlier, this quiet man in a faded flannel shirt had become the one person on Earth who could end her entire career with a single signature. Let's back up. The Bennett family pulled through the iron gates of Cedar Ridge Country Club a little after 10 in the morning. Sprinklers hissed across the 18th fairway. The air smelled like cut grass and lake water. Marcus Bennett drove with one hand on the wheel, a gas station coffee sweating in the cup holder. He wore an old flannel shirt, jeans gone soft at the knees, and work boots that had never seen a golf course in their life. That was on purpose. "Deal closed Monday," he said quietly to his wife. "Before the new management team takes over, I want to walk through it like a regular family would. See what it actually feels like." Renee smiled and squeezed his hand. "So we're spying. We're visiting," Marcus said. "There's a difference." In the back seat, their 2 kids argued the way siblings argue about nothing. Malik, 22, home from his second year on a college golf scholarship, kept flicking a rubber band at his sister's ponytail. Ava, 17, swatted him off without looking up from the folder in her lap. That folder was the reason they'd driven 3 hours to be here at all. Ava had qualified for the club's junior invitational, the biggest tournament of her life, and the acceptance letter sat inside that folder like something made of glass. "You nervous?" Renee asked her. "Nope," Ava said then. "Okay, a little." They parked themselves. No valet, no fuss, no announcement. The lobby hit them with cold air conditioning and the smell of lemon polish. A grand staircase curved up toward the second floor. Oil portraits of stern old men in argyle sweaters lined the walls, watching everybody who walked beneath them. Behind the front desk stood a woman in her late 50s with tired, kind eyes and a name tag that read Dorothy. She was sorting the morning mail. One envelope sat apart from the rest, thick, official, stamped with a crest that read Hartwell Land and Leisure Group. Ownership transition. A man in a navy blazer walked past and flicked 2 fingers at it without breaking stride. "Dorothy, just file that corporate nonsense. Nobody reads it." Dorothy set it down in her tray. She didn't file it. Something told her not to. Marcus noticed the envelope. He said nothing. He filed it away the same place he filed most things, behind a calm, unreadable face. Near the bar, a woman in white tennis clothes watched the family over the rim of a mimosa. Her name was Deborah Wickham, and she'd been a member long enough to believe she owned the air in the room. Her eyes crawled slowly over the Bennetts, the flannel, the boots, the gas station cup, and she leaned toward her friend and murmured something behind her hand. The friend laughed without smiling. That was the first cold spot in the room. Small, easy to miss. Marcus felt it anyway. He'd spent a lifetime learning to read a room the way other men read weather. Ava lifted her phone and filmed a few seconds of the marble floor, narrating under her breath like a tiny documentary host. "Okay, tournament day, fancy club. Dad's pretending he's not nervous for me." "I'm not nervous," Marcus said. "He's nervous," Ava told the camera. A brass plaque by the desk read "Members and Guest Only." The whole building ran on lists, who belonged on paper and who didn't. Nobody guessed that the 17-year-old with the shaky phone was quietly building a record of her own. For one more minute, it was a good morning. Renee straightened Malik's collar, even though he was a grown man, and he groaned about it. Ava checked her tea time against a printed sheet taped by the door, found her name, and grinned. Then they turned toward the dining room, and a woman in a sharp gray suit stepped directly into their path. Her name tag read Priscilla Highs, General Manager. Silver blonde hair pulled back tight, a country club tan, and a smile that never once touched her eyes. "Can I help you people find your way back to the parking lot?" she said. And just like that, the morning ended. Priscilla Hayes planted herself like a locked gate. "We're here for brunch," Marcus said evenly. "My daughter is playing in the Junior Invitational. We have a reservation under Bennett." Priscilla didn't even glance toward the front desk. She looked the family up and down. The flannel, the boots, the gas station coffee cup still in Marcus's hand, and her mouth curled like she'd caught a whiff of something spoiled. "I think you're confused," she said. "This is a private membership club. Maybe you drove past it on a map app and thought you'd take a look around." "I didn't see it on a map app," Marcus said, voice level. "We have a reservation. It'll take you 10 seconds to check the book." "I don't need 10 seconds, Priscilla snapped, louder now, playing to the room. "I know exactly who belongs at Cedar Ridge, and it is not you." A few heads turned at nearby tables. A fork clinked against a china plate and went still. Somewhere a piano kept playing, soft and oblivious, like a soundtrack to a scene it couldn't see. That was escalation 1. Pure gatekeeping. A woman deciding on sight that a family didn't fit the picture she'd built in her head. She wasn't finished. She gestured at the plain travel mug in Renee's hand like it was contraband. "Let me guess. You're here to sneak 9 holes in before anyone notices. Maybe use our pool while you're at it. People like you always think the rules are for somebody else." "People like us," Marcus repeated very quietly. "You heard me." Renee stepped forward, calm but firm. "Ma'am, our name is on the guest list. My daughter earned her spot in this tournament. All we're asking is that you look." Priscilla's eyes slid over her like she was furniture blocking a hallway. "I run this club. I don't take instructions from people who wandered in off the highway looking for a free Sunday brunch." That was escalation 2. The insult, out loud, polished for the whole room to hear. You could feel the temperature of the lobby drop. The good morning was gone. In its place came the particular silence of a crowd that has quietly decided to watch instead of help. Ava's thumb found the record button. The little red dot bloomed at the corner of her screen. She lowered the phone to her hip, casual as anything, and kept it pointed straight at Priscilla. Priscilla raised a hand, and across the lobby, a broad-shouldered man in a security polo peeled off the wall and came striding over. His name was Curtis Doyle, and he moved like a man who'd been waiting all morning for someone to finally meet him. "We've got some trespassers," Priscilla told him, loud, performing now, refusing to leave. "You know the type." Curtis planted himself a foot from Marcus, chest out, breathing slow through his nose. "You folks need to head out right now. Don't make this hard." "We're guests," Marcus said. "You're a problem," Curtis said. Big difference. That was escalation 3. The threat now had a body attached to it, and the body was standing too close. Priscilla, sensing blood in the water, began circling, talking to the tables as much as to the family. "You see this every single season," she announced to the room. "People who don't belong, trying to sneak their way in, and then acting shocked when somebody has the nerve to say something. Then they go cry about it on the internet." She looked dead at Ava's phone and smiled. "Go ahead. Film me, sweetheart. 19 years running this club. Nothing is going to happen to me. Write that one down." "Show me identification," Priscilla barked, wheeling back on Marcus. "All 4 of you. Right now, or Curtis walks you out the hard way." "You didn't card the couple who walked in right behind us," Malik said. It was the first thing he'd said all morning. His voice was even, but his jaw was tight enough to crack a molar. 2 minutes ago, you smiled and waved them straight through. "You're only carding us." Priscilla's face went flat and hard. "I card whoever I please. This is my house." That was escalation 4. A rule invented on the spot and aimed at exactly one family. The oldest trick in the book, and every person in that lobby knew it, and nobody said a word. Deborah Wickham drifted closer, phone already lit up and glowing. She wasn't filming for help. She tapped the screen, went live, and started narrating in a bright, poisonous little voice. "You guys are not going to believe what's happening at the club right now. Some people have zero shame. Watch this. She panned the camera slowly across the family like they were animals behind glass, then typed a caption with 2 thumbs and a satisfied little smile. The kind of caption you'd be ashamed to read out loud. Marcus saw all of it. He didn't lunge. He didn't raise his voice. He turned back to Priscilla and asked, flat and almost gentle, "What's your full name and your title?" Priscilla puffed up, mistaking the calm for a man running out of fight. Priscilla Hayes, general manager. 19 years running Cedar Ridge. Write it down. Tell your friends I'm not hard to find. I'll remember it, Marcus said. Every word. Something in the way he said it should have put ice down Priscilla's spine. It didn't. She was too busy winning in front of an audience. Behind the desk, Dorothy's hands had begun to shake. She slid a printed reservation sheet out from the log, folded it once, and tucked it carefully under the desk blotter. Quiet proof, waiting for the right moment. The lobby was packed now. Brunch had simply stopped. A small child somewhere asked his mother what was happening, and she shushed him and kept right on watching. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, lighting up the whole ugly scene like a stage nobody had chosen to be on. Last chance, Priscilla hissed, stepping in close, dropping her voice for only the front row to hear. Take your kids and your little tournament folder and crawl back to whatever neighborhood you actually belong in before I have you dragged through that door in front of every single member here. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. He looked at his daughter, 17 years old, holding 2 years of 6A. Practice inside a manila folder, chin up, refusing to let a single tear fall. Then, last of all, he looked at the envelope still sitting sealed in Dorothy's tray. He made a decision. Not in anger. That was the frightening part. He made it the way he made every decision that had ever moved real money. Cold, clear, final. Priscilla, he said, I want you to remember exactly how you're standing right now, the way you're smiling. Remember all of it. She laughed in his face. Is that supposed to be a threat? No, Marcus said. It's a favor. You just don't know it yet. He reached into his back pocket. Curtis tensed, one hand hovering. Priscilla's smile flickered, then widened, certain the man was finally reaching for a wallet, a white flag, a beggar's last plea for mercy. Marcus pulled out his phone. He scrolled to a single name and pressed call. He lifted it to his ear, eyes never once leaving Priscilla's face. The whole lobby held its breath. The line picked up on the second ring, a voice, dry and unbothered, the voice of someone interrupted on a Saturday. Marcus, the closing's done. What's wrong? That was Elena Cho, his general counsel of 11 years. She didn't do small talk, and she didn't do panic. Elena, Marcus said, calm as a man ordering coffee. I'm standing in the lobby at Cedar Ridge. Pull the ownership transfer file, the copy with the management authority clause. Send it to the front desk here, right now. A pause. The faint sound of a chair pushing back. You okay? I'm fine, Marcus said. I just want it in writing, in this room, in the next 5 minutes. Sending now, Elena said, and hung up. Priscilla burst out laughing. Oh, that's adorable. He's calling his lawyer. She turned to the room, arms wide, playing to the crowd. Folks, we've got a tough guy. Called his attorney, because I asked him to leave my club. A few members chuckled along. But here's the thing nobody in that lobby had clocked yet. Marcus hadn't raised his voice one single time, and calm men who don't raise their voices are rarely the ones who end up losing. Curtis crowded in closer, emboldened, and put a flat hand against Malik's shoulder, shoving him a step toward the door. Let's go, big guy. Walk. Malik didn't swing. He was 22, built like a doorway from 4 years of hauling golf bags across 3 continents on scholarship trips, and he could have. Instead, he set his feet, looked the guard dead in the eye, and said, Take your hand off me. His voice didn't shake. That was the part that unsettled Curtis, who was used to people flinching. Or what? Curtis said. Or you explain to a judge why you put your hands on a guest who never threatened you. Malik said. There are 3 cameras on you right now. 2 of them are ours. Curtis's hand came off the shoulder, slowly. But it came off. A red-faced man at a nearby table stood up, napkin still tucked into his collar. Just leave already, he called out. You're ruining everyone's brunch. Have some respect. Respect, Renee repeated softly. She looked at him until he sat back down and found something very interesting in his eggs. That was escalation 5. They'd gone from words to hands, from insult to assault, right there on the marble in front of nearly 40 witnesses and a live broadcast. Priscilla, not liking the loss of momentum, reached for the cruelest thing within arm's reach. She snatched the manila folder out of Ava's hands, ripped it open, and pulled out the tournament acceptance letter. She held it up where the whole room could see it. Then she tore it in half, 2 pieces fluttering down onto the cold marble floor. There, she said. No tournament for you. Whoops! She smiled when she said whoops. Nobody moved to pick it up. Not the members. Not the staff. The 2 halves just lay there in a square of sunlight, and somehow that torn sheet of paper was louder than anything Priscilla had shouted all morning. Renee bent down slowly, picked up both halves, and tucked them into her purse like they were made of glass. She straightened and looked at Priscilla with something colder than anger. You're going to wish you hadn't done that, she said. Is that another threat from the wife now? Priscilla rolled her eyes. It's the truth, Renee said. There's a difference. You'll learn it in about 3 minutes. Ava stood very still, chin up, eyes wet, nothing falling. She looked at her father, and he gave her the smallest nod, the kind that says, hold on, baby, I've got this. That was escalation 6. Not louder, crueler. The kind of cruelty that targets a kid's 2 years of practice just to feel bigger for 30 seconds, never once realizing it's signing a confession. Priscilla kept going, because people like Priscilla always keep going. She stepped in close to Marcus again. Here's what happens now. You walk your family out that door, or I call the police and tell them you trespassed and threatened my staff. Guess who they believe? Me. Every single time. You should be grateful I'm letting you leave at all. The lobby was dead silent. Curtis had drifted toward the front doors. Other staff had drifted into the hallway. The Bennetts were boxed in on 3 sides, a family in weekend clothes, surrounded, filmed, humiliated, a torn dream sitting inside a purse. Deborah kept narrating to her phone, gleeful, zooming in on Ava's wet eyes. That was the shot she wanted. Get that camera out of my daughter's face, Renee said, stepping between them. Deborah just smiled and stepped sideways for a better angle. It's a public lobby, honey. I can film whatever I want. Remember you said that, Marcus said quietly, without even turning around. You're going to hear those exact words again very soon. Deborah laughed. She had no idea she was filming the most expensive video of her entire life. Priscilla leaned in one more time, certain she'd already won. Last warning. Doors are right there. Use them before I stop being polite. Polite, Malik said under his breath. Is that what this is? What was that? Priscilla snapped. Nothing, Marcus said, resting a hand on his son's arm. We're not the ones who need to worry about being polite right now. Behind the desk, Dorothy had stopped pretending to sort mail. Her hand was pressed to her mouth, eyes shining. 19 years she'd worked that lobby. 19 years she'd watched Priscilla do quieter versions of this to other people, and never once been able to stop it. This time felt different, and she didn't yet know why. Then, 90 feet away, a machine behind the desk began to hum. The reception printer was waking up. Dorothy turned toward it. The first page slid out face up, and she read the letterhead, and her whole body went still. She knew that crest. She'd seen it that very morning, stamped on the thick sealed envelope in her tray. The one Priscilla had waved off as corporate junk. Hartwell Land and Leisure Group. Her eyes lifted off the page and found Marcus. Then swung to Priscilla, then back to Marcus, growing wider with every inch. "Miss Hayes," she said, voice coming out, strange, high and tight. "Miss Hayes, you need to see this, right now." Priscilla waved her off without looking. "Not now, Dorothy. I'm busy, ma'am." Dorothy stepped out from behind the desk, pages trembling in her hand. "I really think you want to stop talking." Something in her tone finally cut through the noise. The lobby turned, almost as one, toward the woman holding the papers. And Marcus Bennett, for the first time all morning, allowed himself the smallest smile. "Go ahead, Dorothy," he said gently. "Read it out loud. Let everybody hear it." Dorothy lifted the pages, hands still shaking, but her voice found its footing. "This is a notice of ownership transfer. Filed and signed 3 weeks ago." She swallowed. "It says Cedar Ridge Holdings, the company that owns this club, the land, the clubhouse, all of it, was acquired in full by Hartwell Land and Leisure Group." She looked up. The purchase price was $190 million. The seller was in financial receivership. The buyer took over everything. The word landed in the lobby like a dropped glass. "The new owner is named on the final page," Dorothy went on, quieter now. "The person with sole management authority over this entire club." She turned the last sheet around so the whole room could see the signature line. Marcus Bennett. For a moment, nobody breathed. Priscilla's face did something complicated. The smugness peeled off first, fast, like paint in a strong wind. Then confusion. Then the slow, sick dawning of a woman doing math she never wanted to finish. That's a forgery," she stammered. "Anybody can print a letterhead." "It came off your own corporate fax line, Ms. Hayes," Dorothy said. "The one only management uses. And it matches this." She held up the still-sealed envelope from her tray, the one Priscilla had told her to file as junk that very morning. Right on cue, the front doors opened. A woman in a sharp charcoal suit walked in fast, heels clicking on marble. This was Sandra Okafor, the club's outgoing board chair, who'd gotten a call from Elena Cho on her way out of the parking lot and turned straight back around. She took one look at Marcus and stopped cold. "Mr. Bennett," she said, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. "We weren't told you'd be visiting in person today. I'm so sorry. Is there a problem?" Then she saw the 2 torn halves in Renee's hand. She saw Ava's wet eyes. She saw Priscilla Frosren and Curtis backing toward a wall. Sandra Okafor, who had spent 3 years trying and failing to rein in Priscilla Hayes, only to be overruled by the old ownership group every single time, felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. Cold, clean relief. She said softly, "What did you do?" Priscilla's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. Marcus finally stepped forward. He didn't tower. He didn't shout. He just stopped being quiet, and the difference filled the entire room. "Priscilla Hayes," he said, "General Manager, 19 years. You told me to write it down, remember? You said your kind isn't welcome here. You said, go beg somewhere cheaper. You said, crawl back to whatever neighborhood spat you out. You tore up my daughter's tournament acceptance, and you said, whoops." He let each line land. "I bought this club 3 weeks ago. I came in today wearing an old flannel and work boots because I wanted to see how Cedar Ridge treats people who don't look rich. I wanted the real place, not the version you dress up for the people you think matter." He looked around the silent lobby. Well, I saw it. The power in the room hadn't just shifted. It had flipped completely in under 2 minutes, like a switch thrown by a steady hand. Curtis suddenly remembered he had somewhere else to be, trying to make himself small, which is difficult when you are built like a vending machine. Deborah Wickham, live stream still running, finally understood what she was holding. Her thumb stabbed frantically at the screen, trying to end the broadcast, but it was already too late. Hundreds of people had watched live. The clip was already saving itself to 100 phones. "Don't stop now," Marcus told her mildly. "You said it's a public space. You can film whatever you want, remember? You're going to want this footage, so will a lot of lawyers." Deborah's face drained white. Ava stepped up beside her father and lifted her own phone. Screen out, the red dot still glowing. "I got all of it too," she said, voice steady at last. Every word from the second she said, "Get lost." Marcus nodded at her, proud, then turned back to Priscilla.
"Here's what's going to happen," he said. "But first, I want you to do something for me."
"What?" Priscilla croaked. "Sit down," Marcus said. "In the lobby, you didn't think we were good enough to stand in. Sit down and listen, because this next conversation is going to take a while." He let the silence sit a beat. Then, soft enough that Priscilla had to lean in to catch it, "You spent this whole morning deciding who belongs. Now I get to decide who works here. Funny how that turns around." Sandra Okafor moved to Marcus's side.
"Mr.
"Bennett, on behalf of the board, some of us have been trying to deal with this woman for years. I have a file, complaints, patterns. I kept every single one." "I'd like to see that file," Marcus said. "You'll have it within the hour," she said, and she meant it. And Priscilla Hayes, 19 years the queen of Cedar Ridge, looked around at the staff who wouldn't meet her eyes and the members who'd stopped chuckling, and slowly, stiffly, lowered herself into a chair. The marble was cold. The piano had long since stopped, and for the first time all morning, the silence belonged to the Bennetts. Priscilla sat, and the excuses started immediately, the way they always do.
"Mr. Bennett, sir, there's been
A terrible misunderstanding." Her voice had gone soft and oily now, all the venom drained out of it. "I was just enforcing club policy. We've had break-ins. I had no way of knowing who you were. You didn't ask who I was," Marcus said. "You told me what I was. There's a difference. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. Some of my best members are." She tugged at her collar. "I've never once had a complaint against me." Sandra made a small sound, almost a laugh. She lifted the folder she'd just promised, already thick with paper. 22 complaints, Priscilla. I counted them on the drive over. The number hung there. The same number of years she'd bragged about all morning, nearly matched, complaint for complaint. Marcus pulled a chair around and sat across from her, close, unhurried, fingers laced. "Here's what happens now. I own this club. That means I own the decision in front of me, and the decision is easy." He turned to Sandra. "As of this moment, Priscilla Hayes is terminated for cause. Walk her out the front door, the same one she wanted to drag my family through." "With pleasure," Sandra said. Priscilla shot up out of the chair. "You can't do this. I have a contract. I have rights." "You do," Marcus said, simply. "Read the conduct clause. You violated it about 9 separate times in the last 15 minutes, on camera, in front of 40 witnesses and a live broadcast." He shrugged. "You did the hard part for me." Then he looked at Curtis Doyle, still trying to blend into the wallpaper. "You put your hands on my son. You shoved a guest who never threatened you. Your contract's done too. Talk to a lawyer before you talk to anyone else. That's not a threat. That's free advice." Curtis opened his mouth, thought better of it, and shut it again. Deborah Wickham had been edging toward the exit this whole time, head down, hoping to slip out in the chaos. Marcus didn't even raise his voice.
"Ms. Wickham." She froze.
"That live stream you ran, the caption you typed, the close-up of my 17-year-old daughter crying. It's public now, saved, shared. You made sure of that yourself." He let it sink in. "You're going to be hearing from people." I'd hold on to that phone. Deborah's mimosa-bright confidence had evaporated entirely. She looked suddenly like exactly what she was, a woman who had been cruel for an audience and forgotten the audience cuts both ways. But here is the part worth noticing. Marcus never gloated. He never raised his voice. He never got down in the mud where Priscilla had built her whole career. He turned instead to the staff frozen against the walls, terrified they were next. "None of this falls on you," he told them. "You were working under someone who built a culture of fear. That ends today. Your jobs are safe. I mean that." You could feel the room exhale. A young server actually started to cry, the quiet, relieved kind. Then Marcus walked to the front desk, to Dorothy, still clutching the printed pages like a life raft. "You didn't file that envelope when she told you to," he said gently. "And you kept the reservation sheet. Why?" Dorothy's chin trembled. "Because it wasn't right. What she did to you, to your daughter, I've watched it for 19 years and never once been able to stop it. I couldn't be part of it. Not again." Marcus looked at her a long moment. "What's your full name?" "Dorothy Kane." "Dorothy Kane," he repeated, the way he'd repeated Priscilla's name an hour earlier. Except this time it sounded like a gift instead of a sentence. "I'm going to remember that one, too." Outside, through the tall windows, 2 staff members walked Priscilla Hayes down the front steps. The same steps, the same door. The woman who'd spent the morning deciding who belonged was escorted off the property she thought she owned. Blinking in the sun, suddenly nobody at all. Ava watched her go. Then she looked down at the 2 torn halves of her acceptance letter in her mother's hand, and for the first time that morning, she let herself breathe. By that evening, the video was everywhere. Deborah's own livestream did it first. The thing she'd filmed to humiliate a family became the thing that hung her. Someone clipped it, captioned it with the truth, and posted it. Then Ava's cleaner footage dropped, full audio, every word intact. By midnight, it had a name online. People were calling it the Cedar Ridge tape. One line played on a loop across the country, over and over, under every version of the clip. "Your kind isn't welcome here." Then the gut punch caption stamped underneath, every single time. "He owned the club. He'd bought it 3 weeks before she said it." News vans parked outside the gates by morning. Members who'd chuckled in that lobby spent the following week quietly scrubbing their own social media. The red-faced man in the golf pants issued a statement nobody believed. But virality fades. What came next didn't. Because Marcus Bennett didn't want a viral moment. He wanted a reckoning, and now he owned the filing cabinets. He started with Sandra's folder, 22 complaints stretching back nearly 2 decades. Then he ordered a full outside audit of every record the club had ever kept. He brought in independent investigators and told them one thing: turn over every rock. What they found was worse than one bad morning. It was a pattern. A long, deliberate, documented pattern. Membership applications from Black and brown families quietly flagged and rejected for years, while applicants with far weaker credentials sailed straight through. Notes in the margins, in Priscilla's own handwriting, that nobody should ever have to read about themselves. Staff of color passed over for promotion again and again, while the good jobs went to Priscilla's friends. Workers pushed out the moment they complained, and buried in old payroll files, employment contracts with language that broke federal civil rights law outright. Priscilla had been running her own private kingdom with its own ugly rules, and the old ownership group had looked the other way for years because she kept the money flowing. The investigators tracked down former staff who'd left in silence over the years. One by one, they came forward. A line cook fired for attitude. The dafter, he reported a slur. A locker room attendant told to use a separate break room. A caddy who'd watched promotions go to men half as qualified and eventually learned to stop applying at all. For years, each of them had assumed it was just them. Now they sat in the same room and understood it had never been just them. It had been the design. The lawsuits came fast. A federal civil rights case landed squarely on Priscilla and the old club entity, built entirely on her own paper trail, her own handwriting, her own recorded voice. There was no spinning a video the whole country had already watched. She hired one lawyer, then another. It didn't matter. You cannot argue with your own margin notes. The trial drew crowds. Reporters filled the benches, and every single day the prosecution simply played Priscilla's own words back to the room. Her voice, her handwriting. Smile when she said, "Whoops." She had built the case against herself, one cruelty at a time, never once imagining anyone would ever hold her to account. In the end, The court handed down a suspended prison sentence and a civil penalty of $2.1 million. She kept her freedom by a thread and lost everything else. Her name became the kind of thing you can never put on a resume again. No club in the country would touch her. The woman who had spent 19 years deciding who belonged now belonged nowhere. Curtis Doyle pleaded out on a battery charge for putting his hands on Malik. He lost his security license for good. He'd shoved the wrong young man on the wrong morning, and it followed him. And Deborah Wickham, her own viral video, became the centerpiece of a civil suit. The close-up she'd filmed of a crying 17-year-old, the caption she'd typed with such a pleased little smile, all of it read aloud in a courtroom. All of it entered as evidence. She settled, rather than let a jury watch it. The exact words she'd bragged about, "It's a public space, I can film whatever I want," came back to cost her far more than she ever imagined. The old ownership group issued a long apology nobody believed either. Other clubs across the state suddenly discovered they needed to review their own membership policies. Funny how that works once the cameras start turning the other way. But Marcus wasn't finished. And this is the part that matters most. He could have sold the club at a profit and walked away clean. He could have made it more exclusive, more expensive, a fortress with his name carved over the gate. Plenty of men would have. Instead, he tore the gate down. He renamed it. Cedar Ridge became Riverbend Commons, and the word commons meant exactly what it sounds like. He opened the grounds to the surrounding community every single weekend, free of charge. Kids who had never once seen the inside of a place like that were suddenly out on the practice green, laughing, learning to swing a club for the first time. He launched a junior golf scholarship for kids of color across the region, the kind of door that had been slammed shut for 19 straight years, thrown wide open. He rewrote the membership rules from the ground up, transparent, reviewed by outside auditors every year, real written penalties for discrimination, in plain language anyone could read and understand. And he found Dorothy Kane, the woman who had refused to file the truth away, and offered her the biggest job in the building. "General manager," he said. "The whole place. Run it like people actually matter." "I think you already know how," Dorothy cried. Then she said yes. Months later, on a bright Saturday afternoon, you could stand in that same lobby and barely recognize it. Neighborhood families wandered the halls. A line of kids waited their turn on the practice green. Dorothy greeted everyone at the door by name, because she'd made a point of learning every single one. Out on the lawn, Ava Bennett was teaching a group of little girls how to grip a club properly for the first time. Malik chased a runaway golf cart, laughing. Renee watched from a bench in the sun. Marcus stood in the doorway of the place that had once tried to throw a family out, and watched it slowly fill up with everyone it used to keep away. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The acceptance letter Priscilla had torn in half, Ava had it framed, both halves side by side, hanging in the new clubhouse hallway. Underneath it, a small brass plaque. It read, "This is who we used to turn away. Never again." So that's the story. A man in an old flannel shirt walked into a club he secretly owned, got told his family didn't belong, and instead of burning the place to the ground, he opened its gates to everyone who'd ever been kept outside. I love that ending. I really do. But I want to be honest with you for a second, because the best part of this story is also the hardest part. Marcus Bennett had something almost nobody actually has. He had the deed in his pocket. He had a lawyer on speed dial and 190 million reasons for Priscilla Hayes to listen. The letter got torn, sure, but Marcus was holding the winning hand the entire time. Most people don't have that. Most people who hear your kind isn't welcome here don't own the building. They don't have an Elena Cho to call. They just have the humiliation and the long, quiet drive home, and the question that follows them for days afterward. Did that really just happen to me? And here's the thing. The Bennetts are made up. But that feeling is not. The locked-out feeling. The carded when nobody else is feeling. The smile that isn't really a smile. That stuff is documented over and over. In real lobbies, in real courtrooms, with real names attached to it. The only fantasy in this story is that the family happened to secretly own the place. So let me leave you with the real version. Because in most of these stories, there's no secret owner walking through the door to save the day. There's just a room full of people who decided it was easier to keep eating. Remember that lobby? Nearly 40 people saw exactly what happened to the Bennett family. 40 people had forks in their hands and phones in their pockets, and almost every single one of them just kept eating. The hero of this story wasn't only the man who happened to own the club. It was also Dorothy Kane, who made close to minimum wage and risked her entire job to tuck one piece of paper under a desk blotter. She didn't own anything. She just refused to look away one more time. That's the part you can actually copy. You probably don't have a deed in your pocket. But you've got eyes, you've got a voice, and you've got a phone that records. Sometimes the bravest person in the room isn't the one with the most power. It's the person with the least, deciding not to be quiet. So here's what I want to know, and I mean this. Have you ever been treated like you didn't belong somewhere you had every right to be? Or were you the one standing nearby, watching it happen, trying to figure out what you should do? Justice in this story wasn't loud. It wasn't a man screaming back louder than the woman who wronged him. It was a guy in old work boots who simply refused to shrink, and then turned around and held the door open for everyone standing behind him. That's the real move, not just winning, opening the door. So ask yourself honestly, if that had been you at the next table over that morning, not the owner, just a regular person watching a family get torn apart by a woman with a name tag and an ugly heart, what's the first thing you would have said? And be honest. Your heart would probably be pounding. Your hands might shake the way Dorothy's did. That's normal. Courage isn't the absence of that fear. It's the thing you do while your hands are still shaking.